I would pass a $1,000 freedom dividend for every American adult starting at age 18. Now, if you've heard anything about me, you've heard that there's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. And all of those things are true. So I'd been considering universal basic income for years, but I became fully convinced in 2016 when I read a book by Andy Stern, the biggest labor leader of his generation. This book really struck me because it was no longer a technologist saying we're going to automate away all the jobs. This was actually the champion labor leader who said the future of labor is no labor, we are screwed, and we need to move to a dividend for all Americans.
Let's talk a little bit about like the premise and the need for this program. So the job numbers superficially look pretty good. The unemployment rate is near a 50-year low. There are currently 7 million job vacancies, 500,000 vacancies in manufacturing alone. Given that there are so many jobs going begging right now, wouldn't a better solution be to take people whose skills are no longer working for the economy and retrain them for those vacant jobs? Why is the solution to say you don't have to work? Here's a check.
We should absolutely invest in retraining, but we should also be realistic about how effective these programs are. So you need a solution that's actually not a political talking point or a fantasy, which retraining ends up being in many, many instances, but a solution that will actually improve people's lives.
Big challenge is paying for this. It's not a cheap program. I've seen your estimates. How do you do it, and how do you get it through a Congress?
Well, here's the great thing, Greg. One state has had a dividend for almost 40 years, and that state is Alaska. It's a deep red conservative state, passed by a Republican governor who said, who would you rather get the oil money? The government, who's going to mess it up somehow, or you, the Alaskan people? And the Alaskan people said, us. And now it's been in effect for decades, wildly popular, has created thousands of jobs, improved children's health. But the Republicans will look at this and say, wait a minute, this helps rural areas and red states on the interior, and this does not create a giant new bureaucracy to make people's decisions. It actually puts decision-making and economic autonomy in people's hands. And many conservatives and independents and libertarians love this idea. So this is bipartisan.
Capitalism has actually been pretty good to you. And yet, it sounds like you're saying there's something fundamentally wrong with our form of capitalism. Is that right? And does it need to be fixed?
In the 20th century, if I had a very profitable company, you could assume a number of things. That I was going to need to hire lots of workers. I was going to need to give them full-time benefits. I was going to hopefully pay them enough so they could consume my own goods. The very famous Henry Ford, I need to pay my auto workers enough so they can buy the car. I need to care about what's going on in my own backyard because my company is situated there. Now in the 21st century, none of these rules apply. I can become very profitable and not hire lots of people. If I do hire lots of people, I can make them all gig workers or Uber drivers. I don't need to worry about what's going on in my own backyard because I sell everywhere. So our system of capitalism is phenomenal at accomplishing its own goals, but those goals are now diverging from the average well-being of the American worker. And you can see that very clearly in the fact that GDP is at record highs, but also at record highs, stress levels, financial insecurity, even suicides and drug overdoses. Our life expectancy has gone down for the last 3 years while our GDP is at record highs.
Obviously, automation, universal basic income, they're the animating pillars of your presidency. What else does a Yang presidency stand for?
Well, my campaign stands for a new way forward that actually rises to the challenges of the 21st century economy. The reality is our government is dangerously decades behind in technology. And we know this because we got rid of the Office of Technology Assessment in 1995, which, if you think about it, was the worst possible timing. and that when Mark Zuckerberg visits Congress, you can see by the nature of the questions that our government does not have the least understanding of what the true challenges and issues are. So my campaign is about actually solving the real problems that got Donald Trump elected and presenting a 21st century modern path forward that actually puts the resources of our country to work improving our own lives instead of phantom economic indicators that have less and less relationship with the average American's well-being.
Describe the first 6 months of a Yang presidency. What are the things you prioritize and how do you get them done?
Well, anyone paying attention to my campaign knows that my flagship proposal is the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month for every American adult. And so my top priority would be passing that through Congress and getting buying power into the hands of the average American.
Unusual about your campaign is that your promises are not ultimately about creating jobs of any sort. It's about saying that, jobs really are not necessary. They're not as great as people say. Is that what you're saying? And how well does that message go over with middle America?
Oh, this is actually a misconception about my campaign. I think jobs are integral to human fulfillment. I think that a couple things. One, we need to broaden what we think of as a job. My wife is at home with our 2 boys, one of whom is autistic. She works incredibly hard and is doing vital and challenging work for the next generation. Second, putting this buying power into our hands would create hundreds of thousands of new jobs right in our communities every single day. The local mechanic and tutor and daycare center and Main Street business, all of them need to hire because people have more buying power in this economy with the freedom dividend. The third thing is that the market systematically ignores many of the things that we know are incredibly important. So that's not just parenting and nurturing and caregiving. That's also volunteerism and arts and creativity and entrepreneurship and risk-taking. So these are the things that get supercharged with the freedom dividend, and many of these things result in new jobs.
You've obviously put a lot of energy, a lot of your life into advocating for these ideas. Why did you decide that you had to be president to really push these ideas forward?
So if you're trying to advance solutions and implement them in a reasonable time frame, we do not have that much time. And so when I looked at the possibilities in terms of advancing this set of policies, I said, well, there's no real way to do it in the right time frame except to run for president and win.
Put the money in our hands. 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 Put the money in our hands.
Can we afford it? Yes. Will it cause inflation? No. Is it awesome? Yes. Is anyone trying to make it happen? Yeah, that guy.